This podcast is brought to you by iPlayHockey.ca. iPlay is the leading hockey insurance provider to coaches, camp instructors, spring and summer hockey leagues, and tournaments across Canada. If you need insurance for hockey, iPlay has you covered. iPlay also provides hockey players and coaches with a wide range of free tools, drills, and skills in their drill vault to enhance on-ice performance and provides crucial off-ice knowledge as well. So if you need insurance for a hockey team, league, or camp, or if you want to teach your kids some new drills, head over to iPlayHockey.ca and check out their new website. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 249 of the pod. Cody Abrams and Melbourne back with you for this one. And full disclosure, we are recording this week's episode early. We are currently recording this one on Wednesday, October 1st, just because of some scheduling conflicts for the three of us this week. So this one's coming out a little early. If we miss any big news items in the hockey world, we do apologize. And in the meantime, keep an eye on our Instagram at Boys in the Booth. We share lots of stories and big news stuff there. Okay, fellas, we're getting set to wrap up our division predictions, and we're finishing off, of course, with the Atlantic. Always excited year in and year out to talk about this division before the start of an NHL season. But before we get to that, let's get into Core 4 stories.
Core 4.
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 Okay, Core 4 stories. And Chad, you were asking if there are contract-related items in this week's edition. No, there are not. Just kidding. Yes, there are. Okay, number one off the bat, of course, is Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. He effing better be excited, as Bill Guerin would say, about the richest contract in NHL history. It is an 8-year extension with the Minnesota Wild, $17 million a season, a whopping $136 million over that 8 years for Kirill Kaprizov. They finally get it done. It's a whopper with a capital W. What do we think about this deal, fellas?
Well, I talked a lot of shit last time we talked about Kirill about if he doesn't want to sign at 16, then just go ahead and start trading him because it's never going to happen. But here he is at 17, so I guess I was wrong there. And who else but the Minnesota Wild to sign a contract that just completely handcuffs them financially for the near future? That's just what they love to do in the state of hockey, and they did it again. But at least it's for a bona fide superstar, maybe the best winger in the league. So it makes sense this time, but I am shocked at 17 million.
So am I. And I think the rest of the hockey world is too. Like, just completely shocked at that number. We have to realize, we are in a new age of contracts in the NHL. With the rising cap and the certainty over the next 3 years, we're in a new age and a new era of contracts. But I didn't see 17 coming. Nobody even saw 16 coming. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, Case. And you and I said, you're going to turn down the richest contract in NHL history. Get bent, trade the guy because he obviously doesn't want to be there. Who turns down $2 million more than the highest paid player in the league per season? That was insane. And I asked the question when we last talked about this, Kirill, what do you really and truly want? What do you really expect to get? And his response is clearly at least 17 because that's what he got. To me, it's an absolutely insane contract. I listened to Billy Guerin on the Real Kipper and Bourne show today talk about it. And he explained, as he sort of has in the past, that certain players are worth different numbers to different franchises. And the Minnesota Wild, they've been building for the last 5 years or so, and they've really started to accrue a lot of, solid players, solid young players, and they've locked a lot of them up for a good amount of time. And this was them just saying, listen, we don't want to restart. We'd rather overpay this guy by however many million you think it is than try to trade him and, kind of for pennies on the dollar and get scraps, or let him walk in free agency. So this was their sort of calculated bet on just saying like, hey, Kirill, we'll overpay you. We've got some good deals for some other players, like Faber is locked up on a good deal. They just signed Rossi to a really reasonable number, guys like that. So they can afford to overpay Kaprizov, I suppose, if any team's going to do it. But 17 is crazy. I also listened to Elliot Friedman the other day say that Connor, and mind you, this was a couple days before Kirill signed, but Friedman was saying Connor is looking at a deal less than $16 million on the short term. So I don't know if that completely changes Connor's number. I suspect that it doesn't. And when Connor signs for less than 17, less than Kirill, I think the NHLPA is going to go absolutely batshit crazy, because Kirill is going to be the highest paid player in the league until the next guy signs for, 20 plus on a long-term deal.
And Kirill is kind of the first domino to fall. Obviously, we're waiting on McDavid next. There's Eichel, there's Adrian Kempe in LA, and then you kind of get into that next tier. Alex Tuch, who is in the final year of his deal with Buffalo, to the Sabres. Please extend him, and the list goes on. So Kaprizov, the first big domino to fall. We know that the salary cap landscape is changing, and I think a lot of guys were waiting for Kaprizov, who gets done first. Now McDavid and Eichel, and the list goes on from there. Okay, guys. Item number 2 here, and it's an RFA who gets a big extension. For your New Jersey Devils case, Luke Hughes finally gets his long-term deal with the Devils. The stalemate is over between the team and the player, and Hughes gets a 7-year extension. $9 million is the AAV on that deal, so he's now making the same amount as Dougie Hamilton on a long-term deal with the Devils, and making $1 million more than his older brother, Jack. So how do we feel about this deal for RFA Luke Hughes in New Jersey?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shock at the $9 million number, at least at first, when you look at this contract. And when you read all the comments on Instagram, it's a lot of salty Rangers fans that are saying, it's like every comment that's like, oh, it's a terrible contract. They have a Rangers logo as their profile picture. It's like, yeah, no shit. You were probably also cheering when you got Capo Caco. But I love this deal. 7 years, that's all I wanted. I almost didn't care what that first number looked like, as long as the 7 years was right after it, because a lot of people were worried about him only wanting to sign 5. That would line up with the end of Jack's contract, and then they can take off together to wherever they want to unite the 3 brothers. A lot of people were saying the Rangers. Looks like that won't happen now. I think Luke is going to be a future bona fide number 1 for the Devils long term. And in 3 years, this contract is going to be, we're going to look back at it like how we look back at Jack Hughes' contract that he's currently on.
Yeah, I was going to say, pick the best contract in the league right now off the top of your head. It might be Jack Hughes, maybe Quinn Hughes, and maybe in 5 years it's Luke Hughes, because yes, even though the $9 million price tag right now is steeper than you'd like to be paying a guy who's playing, he's probably a number 5, maybe a 4 at this point, depending where he slots in. But so that's probably too much to be paying him now.
He'll be the top offensive defenseman for the Devils this year.
Yeah, but in terms of how many minutes you're going to play him, he's probably a 4, you'd think, right? On New Jersey, and a lot of teams, he's probably higher.
Yeah, no.
I think he's better now than you think he is.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what did he have last year? Like 50 points or something? Like as a 20, like a young player in this league, like he is on the path to greatness here. And I think he left a lot of money on the table long term. Like 7 years in this landscape where the cap is skyrocketing is crazy. I think New Jersey fans, like UK's, like the fact that he's there that long. Maybe the first couple of years he doesn't quite live up to the $9 million price tag.
Yeah.
after that, I bet there's going to be a lot of surplus value on that contract.
I mean, yeah, he could have taken 7 for 3 years. 7 would have been more realistic, but then after 3 years, he's going to ask for $15 million or whatever, number he's going to ask. When the cap is that big, he's reaching his potential. There's a number of different ways that could go. And I just like the certainty of this contract. 7 years, $9 million.
Yeah.
Good to go.
And 47 points 2 years ago as a 20-year-old, 44 points last year as a 21-year-old. Like, yeah, he's on the right path here for sure.
All right, fellas, moving on to item number 3 here for Core 4 Stories, a trade that we had last week. And of course, that was Connor Ingram, now a member of the Edmonton Oilers. So he goes to Edmonton from Utah after clearing waivers, plays a game with Tucson in the AHL, and Edmonton gets him for future considerations. Utah retains $800,000 of his $1.95 million cap hit. Ingram, obviously, we knew that he wasn't going to return to the Utah Mammoth. Needed a fresh start, had some time once again in the NHL player assistance program. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm rooting for him. I think this is a good bet by the Oilers, and it gives them some depth at a very important position, and one that seems to get brought up quite a bit when talking about the Oilers. So thoughts on this deal for Edmonton?
I mean, low risk, high reward, and a guy who has played 50 games in an NHL season and put up decent numbers. I'd really like to know what these future considerations are to hold on to $800,000 and give them away for free. That's kind of confusing to me, but I guess it's not the end of the world to a team like Utah that has the money. I like this move for Edmonton, but at the end of the day, is this really what we wanted out of these guys? Don't we want them to go out and get a starting goalie who is solidified as a starter in this league? Because that's been the piece that we've talked about the most the last 5 years. And I'll even go as far as the last decade. They've gone through how many Connor Ingrams on this team? Yeah. Just a revolving door of goalies. And it could be a case of, that's what happens again here, or maybe he pops off. And that's what I'm hoping for. But I just would have thought that Edmonton this offseason would have gotten a true starting goalie.
Yeah, especially, as we've talked about, the price of a starting goalie this offseason wasn't that high. Look at John Gibson going to Detroit. I think that was just a mid-round pick, I think a second or a third or something, and that's all it took to get, a goalie who historically has been really, really good. And last year he had a great season, and they could have had that in Edmonton, but they didn't pounce on it. And listen, Connor Ingram, I've been, talking on Instagram, putting it on our stories for the last maybe week or two, talking about the fact that, it's a good bet for any team here, because for 2 years in a row, 22 to 24, when he was in Arizona, he put up back-to-back 907 save percentages. Like, he was a really serviceable goalie for them, and he had a couple good seasons. Last year, his first year in Utah, he played just 22 games and had an 882. Wasn't his best year, and clearly, there are other reasons off the ice why he wanted a fresh start and wanted to get out of Utah. He's been in the player assistance program a couple times. I know once was the passing of his mother. Another time was due to either alcohol or substance abuse. So there are obviously some off-ice issues, and that's why I think teams have been a bit reluctant to pounce on him and claim him off waivers. Also because of the price tag that he came in at. So with Utah eating $800K, I think it's an absolute no-brainer for Edmonton to pick up this goalie who now is barely making more than minimum. And try it. He's kind of Calvin Pickard insurance to me. Like, Stu Skinner obviously is the guy that they want to go with. Calvin Pickard, beloved teammate by all accounts in that locker room, but was a castaway from multiple teams over the last 5-6 years. So it's insurance at the backup position, low risk, high reward, like you said, Case. And someone said the other day when talking about Ingram, the best ability is availability. And that's the one concern with Ingram, is whether he's going to be available for this team. He's been pretty good when he's in the net. He just hasn't been available that often. So we'll see how it goes for Edmonton and for Ingram going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly wish Ingram all the best. And all right, final item here, guys, for Core 4. Max Pacioretty calling it a career at age 36 after 939 NHL games. I'll be honest, I was a little surprised that Toronto didn't bring him back, at least on a PTO or for league minimum. I thought he was pretty good for the Leafs last season, Chad, and, maybe earn himself a league minimum deal or a tryout elsewhere, but who knows where the body's at, what kind of offers he was looking at, or maybe none whatsoever. So Pacioretty calls it a career, and a pretty good one at that for a player who almost got into 1,000 games in the NHL.
Yeah, I'd like to see what would have happened with his career if he just didn't sustain the injuries he did. He was definitely stinted by that for a long time, but great player. I think he probably still has something to give to some team out there, but at this point, with his injury past, at his age, he's where he probably wants to be. I don't know if he's looking to move to play in San Jose for one more year. I don't know. It makes a lot of sense. So sad to see him out of the league, but good career and makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense for a guy like that who's played so long. He's made his money. He sort of reinvented himself last year on the Maple Leafs, turned into a guy who's throwing hits in the playoffs and stuff. And that, while it was effective for him last season, that's not really his game. And he paid for it by sustaining, more and more injuries as the year went on after coming back, from the Achilles thing twice in a row. So really good player, paid his dues, made his money. Don't think he wanted to move around, like you said, Case. And, it makes sense that he's retiring. What a player, though. Leafs legend. So fun to watch last year. Fun to watch.
That's so insulting to Habs fans. But
yeah. And his highest point total in a season was the number that he wore, 67. And he did that twice. So
he also made $63.7 million. So
wow.
Is that good? That's what Kirill makes next year.
And the Habs love him for a couple of reasons. Number one, was a great player there, former captain. And two, is the guy that they traded to get Nick Suzuki. So there you go.
True.
Yeah.
True.
BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it more convenient to get you started. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Your next chapter starts today. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp online therapy at betterhelp.com/boysinthebooth in paid partnership with BetterHelp. All right, fellas, that wraps it up for another edition of Core 4 Stories. And now we get into our Atlantic Division predictions. This is always a fun one to wrap up our annual division predictions episodes heading into an NHL season. This time it's 25-26 that we're heading into, and it all starts this week, which is crazy. Looking forward to it, and the preseason games have been great, but let's get into it here, guys. So how do we want to do this for the order? Because Case, as you know, Chad and I have got a couple of teams here that we want to talk about extensively.
Just go to Case first, and we'll go through it. Like Case, me, you.
Yeah, we don't want to make it inevitable that Toronto goes first, letting Chad go first.
Exactly.
All right,
it doesn't really matter when Harp goes, because we're not going to talk about Buffalo for a while.
Yeah, it'll be at least 40 minutes, listeners, until we hear Buffalo talk. So,
All right, Kay, start us off. Atlantic Division predictions here for the 25-26 NHL season.
Okay, well, shockingly here, I am going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs in first place in this division. I really like what they've done to the depth of this team. I was talking earlier with Luke that, people are always saying like they have to spread out the money on this team. Like you can't have the core four making so much because it's never going to be successful that way. Well, Marner's gone now. Tavares is making less money. And now everyone's saying, oh, what's this team going to be without Marner? They just can't have it right ever. And that's the way it's going to be in Toronto. So we're just going to have to stop listening to the media and the fans and make our own decisions. And my decision is that this team's going to be first. I like the depth. Obviously, you still have the star scoring and guys like Matthews and Nyes and Willie Nylander. But now they've kind of filled out with good supporting cast, heavy bodies, or at least guys that play heavy, but they can also contribute in the scoring. You got McMahon, Joshua, Waugh, Lawton, etc. And with the addition of the last two that I mentioned there, Waugh and Lawton, you have center options, which free up the likes of Willie Nylander and Domi to play the wing, which I think is good for them. I think both of those guys will be better on the wing, and we've seen that with Nylander, and we're going to see that with Domi. I think that the back end maybe lacks some puck movement, but I don't care if you have steady, consistent, safe play from these guys, which Tanev is the model of that. And Riley Carlo, that pair was fantastic last season. One of the best pairs in the league, both the eye test and analytically. So I think there's a lot to like here. Your capable hands with Stolarz going to feel even better when Woll is back from injury. Overall, I just think that if they can have a better than middle of the pack team D, this team is going to be cruising to the top of this division. Last point before I let Chad talk about his own team here. One sneaky reason that I have them just eking out ahead from a couple teams in this division is surprisingly not a lot of Olympians on this team. And I think that there's going to be a lot of knocks coming out of the Olympic break. And Toronto is probably going to suffer from that a lot less than the likes of Tampa or Florida. So
true. That is true. Yeah. I mean, it'll be Matthews, Nylander. That might be it.
That might be it.
I mean, a guy like Nyes has a chance. Tavares has a chance. Riley and Tanev outside chances. But yeah, it's probably those two guys up front, and that's it. So point taken. Yeah, Case, I listened to our episode last year, Atlantic Division previews, and last year was the first year in a long time, maybe since we started doing the podcast, that I didn't pick the Leafs to win the division, and they did. So I was going to do the same thing again this year. I actually had them in second, and I had another team in first. But since you picked them to finish in first, I'll talk about the team here just for a sec. I'm glad that you mentioned team defense, because that was something last year, depending at which numbers you look at, it could be construed as a bit of a concern. And to me, it was when I dug through some of the numbers, especially a simple one, expected goals against. In actual goals against, they were 8th in the NHL, 8th best. That's pretty good because their goaltending was really good. But in terms of expected goals against, they were 22nd, which is not very good. So I think they have to tighten that up, start limiting chances a bit more, and that will be the key for this year. Because if you look back at previous teams coached by Sheldon Keefe in Toronto, that was one thing that they really excelled at. They didn't have the kind of bruisers or, the kind of shutdown defenders that they have now, but they controlled the puck a lot more and gave up fewer chances. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for team defense this year. Another thing I wanted to comment on just on that point is the Leafs won a lot of 1-goal games last season. So typically they get up a goal and then turtle, do this kind of Craig Berube sort of turtle. And that's when a lot of chances would, kind of come against. So I don't really know how to interpret the number like expected goals against. I don't think it tells the entire story, but it is something to note as the season goes on. But yeah, looking at the lineup, you mentioned it right off the top. No Mitch Marner this year. Honestly, good. Finally, like it's over. We don't have to talk about, them having 4 players tied up 50% of their salary. Like we don't have to talk about that anymore. Tavares makes less than half he did previously. Nyes just signed a nice ticket for a pretty long time. Nylander and Matthews are locked up for a couple more years in Matthews' case and a lot more years in Nylander's case. Like this is like the time is now to get sweetheart deals from guys like Tavares and Stolarz to like really compete. So I'm really excited to see what they can do now that the money is sort of spread out around the team. You essentially replace Marner and his money with Maccelli, Joshua, and Waugh. I think all 3 of those guys are bets. I think at least 2 of them are pretty safe bets. I'm interested to see what Maccelli can do playing in the top 6. I don't think it's a guarantee, but we'll see, right? We'll see. But yeah, I think the team is in a good spot this year, and I could certainly see them winning the division. I think it's the top 3 teams in this division that could, potentially compete for that number 1 spot. And then I think it gets a lot tighter after 3. Maybe there's 4 in there, but I think 3 for sure. So I could see them in number 1 case. How about you, Harp? What do you think?
Yeah, no, interesting. I did not pick Toronto myself to finish in the number 1 spot. I had them in number 2, had another team ahead of them, excuse me. All the talk is about them regressing without Marner. How are you going to replace a guy who is a 100-point getter in the NHL? Look, I get all that, but I think that Tree Living has done a pretty reasonable job here. Number 1, he at least got something for Marner. He didn't walk for absolutely nothing. Nick Waugh is a very serviceable player. He can go up and down your lineup. He can play center and wing. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's a good player. And then, you talk about Joshua. It's obviously a guy that Berube knows well. He needed a fresh start. A couple years ago, he had a very good year in Vancouver. And again, Berube knows him. So that's big too. And then Maccelli, I think, is a good bet. A couple of years ago in Arizona, he was terrific. Like was very good, and he can really transport the puck. Like he is a very good passer. And if he can unlock some of that scoring ability as well, even better. So I wouldn't mind opening night seeing him on the top line with Matthews and Nylander. I know that, they have a few other options, maybe slide Domi over to the wing with those 2, but we'll see. Matthew Nyes, great contract for him, like you mentioned. And with the back end, it's good. The only thing with the blue line, I think, is you need more from Morgan Rielly, especially now on the power play. You don't have Mitch there to quarterback things. Rielly has got to be one of those guys to, quarterback that power play and get back to that level that we saw him when he had 70 points a handful of years ago. He's got to be that good. And I think a full-time partner like Brandon Carlo for a full season will certainly help with that. Like Case mentioned, have a little bit of concern with the goaltending because, as we've talked about, Stolarz has been a terrific goaltender the last couple of years, but not a lot of games. And he's also battled some injuries. Joseph Woll is out for kind of an undetermined amount of time. James Reimer is in on a PTO. Can you rely on a tandem of, with a combination of Stolarz, Hildeby, Reimer potentially? Can Stolarz stay healthy? How many games is he going to play? Because you can't play him every single night. So that's kind of my one concern with this team. But I think the fact that the Marner thing is finally over, it's a divorce that shouldn't have happened. Like Marner probably should have retired as a Toronto Maple Leaf, as a Toronto-born kid, but this became an untenable situation, and it needed to end. I think that having that cloud that hung over this team for so long finally lifted. I think is going to be huge, and it's an opportunity for guys like Matthews and Nylander and Nyes to take another step, and these guys to really take control of the team. And it creates other roles for these guys to step into. They're well coached. I think they're well managed now. And finally, the biggest change has happened. And I think Toronto is better off for it. And I think Toronto is still a very good hockey team.
Yeah. You mentioned goaltending. I just wanted to touch on that quick. Stolarz, yeah, obviously the biggest concern with him is the games played. How many games can he realistically play in a season? You're hoping he's a tandem guy with Joe Woll, but the contract he just signed, sort of indicates that he's signing to be that 1A, 1B guy as opposed to the starter. If he played 60 games last year and had the numbers that he did, that contract would have easily been, 8 million, 7 million, because he had the best save percentage in the league and has been top 5 for the last 2 years, but has only played 30 games a year. So you can't pay him like a starter, right? So that was kind of an indication of where he felt his game was and his health and whatnot to me. I love the contract, but I'd like to see him play more games. Hildeby has looked really good in preseason so far and in camp. By all accounts, he is looking a lot calmer than he has in years past. And, he played about 6 games or 7 games last year for the Leafs, and his NHL numbers weren't good, but he's been an AHL All-Star and he's been in North America now for a couple seasons. So I think it's okay to start with him as the backup for the Leafs this year. And then you got James Reimer on a PTO. And to my surprise, Reimer was actually a lot better than I thought he was last year in a small sample size in terms of goals saved above expected. So it's okay to have him in as the 3. I was kind of shocked when they made the signing, given his history and bad PR, not only on the ice, being in the famous picture for the 4-1, collapse of the Leafs to the Bruins all those years ago, but also, the whole pride thing with him and the bad PR. And the Leafs are typically a team that never signs guys who have any sort of bad PR associated with them. So just interesting to me. I thought there were a lot of other guys out there who, could have been just as good. I was interested to see that they went with Reimer for a lot of reasons. And finally, Joe Woll. I told you guys I listened to last year's episode where we previewed the Atlantic Division. I don't know if you guys remember, but we had a long conversation about Joe Woll not being available at the start of last season. And listen, I understand right now that there are some family reasons that has necessitated him stepping away from the team. Nobody exactly knows what those are or when his timeline for return is. But I just have to say, whether this is fair or not, it's becoming a bit of an issue with Joe Woll that he's not available. And again, whether it's fair or not, I know people deal with injuries. I know people deal with family circumstances that keep you away from the team, whatever. But I could have just played, my 5-minute rant about Joe Woll from last year's episode right now, because it started off me talking about, 2 seasons ago, he first made the team behind Samsonov. He missed a bunch of time that year. Then he got into the playoffs against the Bruins in 2024. He stole Game 6, but then he doesn't start Game 7, and not a single thing was said about it. He was injured. He didn't start Game 7, and nobody knew why. And then after that, after they lose, they go into the offseason, and Brad Treliving has a press conference, and he starts talking about, how the team can keep Joe Woll healthier and more available, and what you can do to tweak his, training to make sure that he's good to go and more durable. And a month after that, it's the start of the season, and Joe Woll's not playing Game 1 when they thought he was going to be the starter. You have to remember, Stolarz was a backup. I know he just had won the cup, but he was brought in to be the 1B to Joe Woll.
Yeah.
Because that's how much, the franchise believed in Woll. And he wasn't available to start Game 1 last year. And then throughout the season last year, he missed time. And then now, like I've mentioned, he's unavailable to start the season again. Nobody really knows why, except for family reasons and that he's not entering the player assistance program. So I think Joe Woll is a really, really good goalie. But if he's not available, it doesn't really matter. So it's becoming a bit of a trend, whether it's fair or not. So I just kind of had to say that and rehash it from last year's conversation, because the same thing is happening again. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it is a good point to bring up, and again, certainly hope that everything's okay and Joe gets back and he's in a good spot. But yeah, no, that's a good point, Chad. This has become a bit of a theme here with a guy that they are certainly counting on to be in the crease for this team.
Yeah, and look what happened to a guy like Jeremy Swayman when he missed training camp last year.
Yeah.
So as a goalie, it's hard. Timing is everything. It's hard.
For sure.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all of the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through our link in the description below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use our link and support the boys. So, one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth.
All right, so talking about Toronto there, and I guess in the number 2 spot, so that would bring down the team that you had number 1 there, Chad. Maybe it's the same for us both.
Yeah, that's right. I'm guessing that it is because for me, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to share their lineup on the screen right now. I picked the Tampa Bay Lightning because they scored a ton of goals last year. They were first in the entire league in goals for. They were fourth in goals against, which was equally as impressive. They added Bjorkstrand and Gord at the deadline last year, and now they're going to have a full season of both of those guys, which I think will be really helpful for the team to score even more goals and maybe be even better defensively as a team as well, with a third line that looks sort of, like it used to when Tampa was winning their cups and going to the finals for 3 straight years. They also added Pontus Holmberg, who I'm all too familiar with, on their fourth line. I think they're probably going to add a guy or two in their bottom 6 around the deadline, or maybe in their middle 6, and push someone like Gage Goncalves down, however you pronounce it.
Gonzalez, yeah, you had it right the first time.
Gonzalez, push him down the lineup a little bit. And the D remains, the same. They made that bet a couple seasons ago, dealing Sergachev to Utah, and they get Mosier, but then they also brought back McDonough, and the whole bet was trying to spread around Sergachev's 20 minutes between 2 guys, and then you have 2 guys who are maybe not quite as impactful as Sergachev, but they're playing 40 minutes as opposed to 20 or 25. So that was the bet, and I think it worked pretty well last year, given the fact that, like I said, they were 4th in goals against, which is a good thing. My one concern for this team is nobody's seen Andrei Vasilevsky on the ice this year. Did you guys know that? There are rumblings around the team that he has not been participating in training camp. So if this team is left with Jonas Johansson and who's the other guy they have? Halverson, that is a scary, scary sight. And there was that was a really strong reason to move them down my list, but I did end up putting them in first place, so I'll settle for second.
Chad, welcome to why I have them at second place.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm a little worried that Vasilevsky is not being seen on the ice, and we're not being told why. And that did frighten me. I was 100% locked in that the Leafs and Tampa would be 1 and 2, whatever which way. And I was kind of flip flopping back and forth. And that was kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge. If it's not broke, don't fix it. That's the motto in Tampa Bay. This offseason, they kind of stuck with what they had, which worked so well last year. The additions are still around, which you love to see, guys getting picked up at the deadline and being able to hang with the team. You look at them, and I just see a well-constructed group of hockey players. I mean, maybe outside of Kucherov, you have stars who are very responsible in their own end, in the likes of Point, Cirelli, Hagel, Paul, I'll say Gensel as well. And then they're supported with the group around them. Guys who are shoot first wingers, but also are puck retrievers and play good defense. Bjorkstrand is a phenomenal penalty killer. I think he scored like 4 shorthanded goals against the Devils alone, which killed me every time I saw it. He's a devil killer. I just like it. They're very well coached. The back end looks similar to last season, minus Perbix, which is very good for this team. Physical, strong, hard to play against hockey. The goaltending just scares me right now, but if Vasi's back, you have world-class goaltending on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing with Tampa is they just have to beat Florida, it seems like, to go anywhere in the playoffs.
No one's done it in the last 2 years.
Yeah, but I think that there's been a lot of talk with the Bolts about whether or not this championship window is still open after a couple of first round exits, and it is very much still open in my opinion. That core group of players is so good. Nikita Kucherov is so elite. You could make a case for him to win the Hart Trophy every single year. He's that good. I still think a guy like Braden Point doesn't get enough credit for how good he is. They just have a really nice mix. It's going to be tough without Nick Paul to start the season, but it's not the end of the world. It's not like you're losing Barkov or Kachuk, at the start of a season. So exactly, Case, I think you put it perfectly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Tampa didn't really need to do much this offseason. And the guys that I thought they brought in, for depth, I thought were nice ads. Holmberg is a very serviceable bottom 6 player, as you know, Chad. And Jacob Peltier, too, could get into some games and play well. Gonzalez looks like a promising young player. And again, Syracuse year after year just seems to be a factory for producing NHL players. And, I think a guy like Connor Geekie, who they got in the Sergachev deal with Utah, along with Mosier, I think could take another step and be a more impactful player for Tampa Bay this year. So whatever's going on with Vasilevsky, hopefully that gets figured out, because they certainly need him. He is still one of the best goaltenders on the planet, and this very much looks like a Stanley Cup contender still. Jake Gensel, 40 goals last year. I mean, just a terrific ad there. They gambled a bit by, not re-signing Stamkos, but they added Jake Gensel. And Brisebois, that general manager, we know that, yes, the Jeannot deal and all of that, but, I mean, you got to hand it to him. He's aggressive. And at the
bold
deadline, we could see Tampa make a big splash to go for another cup once again. So I had them in number 1, fine with them in number 2.
Just something that I want to point out, because I did mention it at the top. I'm looking here and counting 11 Olympians on this team.
Yeah.
Just, a quick count. That's Gensel, Point, Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, Bjorkstrand, Gergensons, Moser, Hedman, Chernak, Vasilevsky. all of those guys will be playing in the Olympics
Yeah.
over the break. And look at all the injuries that came out of the Four Nations face-off. You're going to have more games, tight window. It's going to play a big factor this season.
That is a really good point.
That's
like,
a good
go
point.
beat each other up in Italy, boys, when, you know,
Everyone else is taking a break.
Yeah, you've got Nick Waugh and Johnny T sipping pina coladas and, you know, getting massages. So that's perfect. I did stick with Tampa in first spot. Obviously, they're 2 for our collective rankings because even without Vasilevsky, guys, like, this team just scores so much.
Yeah.
So freaking much. And I
They
think they
do.
might even score more goals this year than they did last year. Trivia, before we move on to number 3. Okay, Tampa had the second best goal differential in the NHL last season in all situations. Without looking it up, guys, do you have a guess who was number 1? Because it kind of surprised me. Each get one guess.
Say goal differential.
Goal differential. Goals for versus
Washington?
goals against. That's a good guess. It's not Washington.
Winnipeg.
I said you only get one guess.
Sorry.
Harp.
I'm going to go with Winnipeg.
It's Winnipeg. You were spot on the second guess. That surprised me, though. I guess Connor Hellebuck was that good. This podcast is also sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. If the tickets are green, for example, you better act quick and secure those things because that's a good deal. But if the tickets are red, maybe wait a bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyway, here's the best part though. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
All right, fellas, we'll move on to number 3 here. And I had the Florida Panthers. Obviously would have them higher, probably at number 1 in this division, most likely. But obviously the unfortunate news about Alex Barkov being out for basically the entire season, 7 to 9 months with the ACL and the MCL injuries, that is a huge factor into this ranking. And Matthew Tkachuk being out till, December with his injury.
Yeah.
However, the Panthers, they don't give a shit where they finish. As long as they make the playoffs, they have a chance to go and win a third straight Stanley Cup. And honestly, even without Barkov and Tkachuk for a considerable amount of time, Barkov obviously for the entire season by the looks of it, this is still a really good lineup, as you can see. Whether or not they have Lundell or Bennett as their number 1C, Evan Rodriguez becomes even more important. You know, having him as your third line center, certainly can't scoff at that. And just so many other good pieces around. You know, Sam Reinhart is now one of the best two-way players in the NHL, and he can score goals too. And he can also play center if need be. You have Verhaeghe there as well. A full season of Brad Marchand, you know, he'll have to elevate his role on this team, and he certainly can do that. Up until the deadline last season, he was kind of the guy for the Boston Bruins, and that's why he fit in so well in Florida, because he didn't have to do as much. And then, you know, again, it's more opportunity for guys like Mackie Skamasevich, and you know, we were looking at that contract and we couldn't believe it because he gets, you know, just league minimum or whatever, and for a really good young player. And so you've got a guy like that, Luke Cunnin, who they brought in on league minimum as well. Even a guy like Jack Studnicka has looked really good for them in the preseason, and the back end is still intact with Forsling, Jones, Ekblad, who's returned. They have Bob as well. So might be a little tough out of the gate for the Panthers, but no question about it, this is still a playoff team. Yes, they've got some holes, but I think they can fill them by committee. There's enough there. And I felt like third place was a fair position to put them in without dumping on them too much.
That's exactly where I had them, for third place. And like Harp, just what you mentioned there, the depth of this team and their ability to just turn anyone into a good depth piece. There's a number of New Jersey Devils on this team that it just didn't work out in New Jersey, and then they come to Florida and they're studs in the bottom six. Boqvist, Greer, Nosek, Kulikov, like even Vitek Vanacek played well for Florida. It's frustrating that they can just turn anyone into a good hockey player. But the thing I love about this team is I look at the group of forwards and I would put every single one of them out on the penalty kill and feel comfortable with it. And that's just something to love about this team. And yeah, they're missing two big pieces, but so much depth up and down. Everyone steps up at the perfect time. Sam Moskevich, I thought, was going to be the odd man out that they weren't going to able to hold on to him when I was looking at the roster breakdown and the cap space and who had to sign last year. Here he is. They managed to fit him in. Everyone signed cheap. Everyone signed friendly. We got space for you, Mackey. Oh, you want league minimum? Even better. So, I mean, here we are once again. Somehow the back end is better than they were last year. How is that fair? How's that even happen? I don't know. Officer Bob's showing no signs of slowing down, even though Father Time always catches up. He's still undefeated. A great goalie. He's undefeated. Yeah, the only reason I don't have these guys first place is the injuries, obviously. And once again, a lot of guys going to Milan on this team.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this team, third place, I think, is the perfect spot for them. Even if everybody was healthy, I don't know that they necessarily run away with this division. Like last year, for the most part, guys were healthy, except for after the Four Nations, I suppose.
Except the beginning of the season when they didn't have Ekblad or Matthew Tkachuk.
That is true, but both of those injuries didn't last as long as we thought they were going to. And then also after the Four Nations, Tkachuk was obviously hurt and he played through that, and that's why he's missing so much time. But yeah, like even with those two guys who are going to be out, like I don't know if they run away with the division, because I think they're a team that just knows they just have to get in and then go from there.
Yeah.
Like the last two cups that they've won, they haven't run away with a division or a conference. They, have gotten in, whether it's 8th place in the conference or, 3rd place in the division like last year. Like it's just a team that knows they just have to get in. They're so well coached. It's such a next man up mentality. Case, I like the point you made where, you can look at anyone in this forward group and feel confident throwing them out there on the penalty kill. You can also do that on the power play. Like they have such versatile players up front. And I think that's why they're so confident and why it's so easy for them to play next man up mentality, because whoever, needs to step up, they kind of just fit into the system, and guys who don't, they cast away, and guys who do, they do everything in their power to keep them. Brad Marchand signing a 6-year deal, or like you said, Sam Moskevich signing for league min, or, Rodriguez, I thought was going to be the cap casualty, but then all of a sudden the cap goes up through the roof, and, his $3 million a year doesn't look too bad, plus the injuries, so you can fit him in. So yeah, like I think third place is the perfect spot for this team. A full season of Jones is going to be really important too. Like he was so important for them when they got him last year at the deadline, and he was really important in the playoffs. So that was one of the concerns we had about the Panthers last season when we were talking about them in our season preview episode. So yeah, the rich get richer. You get Jones for a full season. You got him for 4 more after this one. This team's going to be totally fine. They just have to get in. The only concern, I guess, is, other teams in this division nipping at their heels potentially, because the Ottawa Senators last year finished just 1 point behind the Panthers. And, 1 point could make all the difference this year, especially because, case like you and I talked about last week, I think 5 teams from the Atlantic are probably going to make the playoffs like they did last year. And, 1 point could be the difference between making the playoffs or finishing 6th in this division. So I think third's a good spot, though.
Yeah, for sure. Case, back to you for the number 4 spot here.
This was the pick I was dreading to have when I was prepared for this episode. I really didn't want this one, and I mean, there's a couple picks you don't want in this draft, but I'm gonna go. I flip flop a lot here in the 4th spot. 2 teams fighting here, maybe even 3. Who knows? But I did eventually land on the Ottawa Senators in the 4th spot. Last year, they were middle of the road offensively, middle of the road in the DN2, and made the playoffs. If they take a positive step forward in either of those departments, then they will be back in the playoffs. And I think they will. Coming into the season, they're healthy. Their top 6 is healthy. I think Batherson's a little dinged up. What's new? But it doesn't seem like a long-term situation. You got full seasons from Cousins and Zetterlund, the addition of Spence on the back end, another season of Allmark, and a backup now that they're confident in. I think the experience that these guys have over Montreal and the, I'll call it, safer style of play compared to Montreal will put them ahead of them in the standings. Just don't, I mean, they're not very good at fights, we learned in the offseason here, but if they can keep Brady Tkachuk out of the sin bin, this will be a very competitive team.
Yeah, I agree. I also had Ottawa in the 4 spot. It wasn't as close for me as it seems like it was for you. I think Montreal's a good team, but I just looked at some of the underlying numbers and even their goal differential from last year, and I just had to come out with Ottawa on top here in the 4 spot. The one thing that scares me about this team, although I guess maybe it shouldn't as much as it maybe would last year, is the goaltending a bit, because Allmark is really, really good, right? But he comes out in the media sometimes and he says weird things. Like a couple days ago, he said, yeah, like my camp has been horrible. And it's like, you're the starting goalie of a team who, you know, is looking to take a step and you need confidence. I don't know. I guess that's just his personality, right?
He's a goalie.
I know, it's so weird when he's like, yeah, my camp sucked. Like, yeah, I stunk in that preseason game, but oh well, like, here we go. It's like, okay, Linus, like, good luck, bud. But I guess now they have Marilainen. They're confident in him. Sjogard can play some games if they need him to. So I think goaltending shouldn't be that much of a concern, even though I wouldn't want my goalie coming out and saying stuff like that. They're looking for Zetterlund to take a step this year as well. Obviously, they acquire him midway through the season last year, and you know, he kind of played down in their lineup while they tried to find a place for him to fit. But as we know, like, he's a very talented player, a very strong player, and I think they're going to be looking at him, to contribute this year in the top 6 rather than in a bottom 6 role. So I could see him going out getting 25 goals. Like, why not, right? He's a finisher, and there are tons of players who can pass to him on this team, and I'm sure he'll be playing power play this year. So that is kind of a wild card for me to look at, kind of a contributor that could sort of step up. And then, in case you mentioned it, like, they add Spence. I think their defense is pretty solid. Sanderson's another year older. You'll look for him to take another step as well and really kind of solidify himself as one of the D-men in the league who can kind of control the play every time he touches it. You know, he has really developed into more of a player that I thought he was going to be at this point in his career. I've been super impressed by Sanderson, and this team honestly is in a good spot. Like, and I think they're poised to make the playoffs again. It's not a given because we've seen what can happen when a team rests on their laurels or, you know, gets discouraged after a slow start, which has happened in Ottawa a few times. But I think last year was, it gave them a taste, making the playoffs, what it's all about, Battle of Ontario. Their fans were super engaged. Like, I think Ottawa's in a good spot, and they should make the playoffs in the 4 spot in this division.
Yeah, it's the middle third of the season is when they play their best hockey. They just have to stretch that out throughout the whole year, or at least 2/3 of it. I just I don't want to derail the Ottawa Senators talk here, but I just thought about something that I'm going to get raked through the coals for is saying Kucherov and Vasilevsky are Olympians because they will not be allowed to play. So
Oh, yes.
scratch
Good
that from the
catch.
record.
So that went over my head too.
Splice that,
Same.
clip it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anyways, Harp.
Yeah.
Ottawa
Yeah, we'll
Senators.
cut that out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was the team that I had in this fourth spot, and maybe that'll surprise you guys a little bit, but this was easy to put them in this spot. They took a big step last year. Obviously, I think that experience for guys like Tkachuk, Stützle, Sanderson, etc., was so valuable for this team. I think Travis Green came in and did a really good job of teaching this team how to, be responsible defensively. I know they were kind of middle of the road in terms of the numbers, but overall, I thought they were better defensively last season. They definitely need to score more goals. And so I think, having Dylan Cousins and Fabian Zetterlund for a full season will certainly help. This is a big year for a guy like Shane Pinto as well, who is going to need a new contract. And then you expect just the usual from Tkachuk, who can be a 40-goal scorer in this league, Stützle, who can, be a 90-point guy in this league. He already has been. Batherson, just under the radar. Yep, 30 goals, 30 assists. Like he's that for this team. And Chad, I agree with you. Very impressed with Sanderson. Took a huge step last year and certainly looks like an elite defender for this Ottawa Senators team. With the goaltending, have a little bit of concern in terms of Ullmark, and again, the availability seems to be a theme on this episode in terms of, players or goaltenders. Ullmark has got to stay healthy because while Ottawa made the playoffs last year and they certainly deserved to, they got a little lucky with the run that Levi Merilainen went on. And if they're counting on Merilainen to be the full-time backup this season, and say Ullmark goes down again, I don't think you can necessarily count on Merilainen to go on that kind of a run again. And after him, the depth of the goaltending really gets thin. After that, you go to Sogard and Hunter Shepard as well. So Ullmark, a terrific goaltender, but has got to stay healthy more for this team. And we kind of mentioned it too, but for the Senators, every year they seem to just lay an egg in November. I think if they can avoid that, then that's going to make for a more complete season for the Senators team. And I think that's kind of the next step that they can get to, because as we see with the best teams, those teams that contend for championships every year and contend for playoff spots every year, they don't have those long losing streaks, and they don't have a month or two of the season where it's just a dog's breakfast. And that seems to be November every year for the Senators. But with this team now and the current state of it, you're not thinking that it's over every year when they have a tough November. But the early solution to that is to just be better in November, have a better start. So, no, I like this team. Good young core. Got into the playoffs last year. Certainly expect them to do that again with them in this 4 spot.
Yeah, I think you just want to get 50, 55 games out of Ullmark, and you're happy with that. You kind of manage it throughout the season, get Merilainen in for like the back-to-back games or weaker teams. Just kind of manage it that way. 55 games, you're happy with that out of Ullmark.
Yeah, sure. And if Merilainen plays, 25 or 30, and then, the rest of the games you mix in Sogard to get him some action too. Like, and you find starts for everybody in there. Like, Ullmark is paid, like, what's his deal? 8.25. He's paid as an elite starting goalie.
Yeah.
But the most games he's ever played is 49 in a season. Last year he played 44. I just put it up on the screen there. So I think you can push that and get him to about 55, like you're saying, Case, and then if he's healthy and going well, then that's probably the sweet spot, maybe a little bit less, and then kind of go from there. Final thing I wanted to say about Ottawa. Did you guys see that they added Arthur Kaliev as well?
Yes, which makes a lot of sense. Staios knows him from his time in Hamilton.
That's right. Played just 14 games last year.
In the holster. Hard pass that. Ready to go.
Ready to go. He had that
Someone
ready to
mentioned
go.
Kaliev.
Holy smoke. Slotted in on their fourth line right now on Puckpedia's lines. Played 14 games last year, had just 4 points. And did you guys see the story about him? I'll share this quick. I don't know if you guys saw this or how true it is, but apparently his girlfriend here, social media influencer Arthur Kaliev's ex, claims he scammed her out of $50,000 and has a gambling addiction.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I'm sure if he's roommates with Shane Pinto, that'll be a nice way for them to bond. And it'll be fun for everyone in Ottawa. Just had to get that in there because I thought that was crazy. She posted a 34-part story about it on TikTok.
Wow.
I haven't watched it, but I've seen the headlines about it. Just thought that was crazy and had to share.
That is crazy. I do remember seeing that posted by Puck Empire or Hockey Forever, one of the two. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh. Gambling in the nation's capital.
Yeah, and they wear what, Bet365 on their helmets or Betway or one of them. Classic.
I think it's Bet365. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be wrong, but that doesn't help either. Anyway, but and one more thing about Ottawa, Carter Yakimchuk has looked very good in the preseason. Obviously, their first round pick could certainly make this team. And they're going to be without Nick Jensen to start the season. So maybe Yakimchuk makes it. You added Spence, who needed a fresh start. They've got some depth there now on the blue line, and that's not something we were able to say a couple of years ago.
I'd like to see Yakimchuk get a crack here.
Yeah. Would like to see him in the World Juniors for Team Canada in Ottawa last year. What a missed marketing opportunity that was, Hockey Canada. Nice one.
Yeah, imagine he cracked the Sens but couldn't crack the World Juniors. That's crazy.
Gosh. Might be like that for a lot of other guys trying to make NHL teams this year who didn't make that World Junior team. Anyway, Chad, number 5. And listen, before you say anything, just remember that, you're a really good friend and I love you.
Well, despite all the sweet talk,
Drift.
Despite all the sweet talk, Harp, I am not picking the Buffalo Sabres in this number 5 spot in the division. I'm picking the Montreal Canadiens. I think they're a better team than Buffalo. And until I'm proven wrong, I have to stop betting on Buffalo to make the playoffs. Last year, I said that they had a good chance to make it. I think I picked them in the 4 spot. And I just can't do that anymore. I just won't keep doing it. I won't keep trying to kick the football. I'm Charlie Brown, and it keeps getting moved right out from under my feet when I try to kick it. So I won't do it again. I'm picking the Montreal Canadiens to finish in the 5 spot. And like I said, probably make the playoffs because I think 5 from the Atlantic are making it again this season. They're going to have to score more and defend better. I know, easy, right? That's something that is very easily done at the NHL level. Score more and defend better. But I think they're poised to do that this season. They have a full season of the eventual Calder winner this year, Ivan Demidov. That guy is, I don't know how many points he's going to get, but man, he's good. And I don't want to feed into the whole hype train around this kid, but every clip I see of him, it's Instagram hockey. And Steve Valiquette would hate it, but we love it over here at Boys in the Booth. So yeah, full season of Demidov. Hudson, similar to Sanderson, is a guy who, has kind of burst on the scene and exceeded expectations as, an offensive defenseman. He was so good last year. There's a reason I kept him in fantasy hockey this year. I really believe in him. I think he's going to have another great season as he's another year older. And then obviously the elephant in the room, they got Noah Dobson, and their blue line is finally starting to look like a blue line that belongs in the playoffs. I like Montembeault as their starter, as we talked about last year. Great season, and who knows if he'll be on the Olympic team, but he'll certainly have a shot for Team Canada. He was on the Four Nations team. And then Kähkönen as their backup. I think that's, solid. They needed a backup goalie. I think Kähkönen is a serviceable guy, can give you, about league average, if not better. And that's what they're going to need, because this team kind of bleeds chances. And I think they're going to have to tighten that up, get some good goaltending, and score a bit more. But like I said, I think they're poised to do all of those things. So I've got them in the 5 spot. What do you guys think?
You don't think it's going to be Dobish as the backup? Isn't he
quite
good last year?
It could be Dobish.
I like Fowler coming too.
I like Kähkönen as a bit of a stopgap. I think it's unfair for young goalies to kind of just throw them into the league. Like, we've seen what's happened to, again, sorry, Hart, but a guy like Devin Levi, who gets thrown into it and gets shelled on a bad team for, a couple straight seasons, and then his confidence is shook, and who knows what that does to his development. I think Kähkönen's a good stopgap. If they run 3, they run 3, because Dobish was really good last year. That's fine.
Yeah. Montreal is who I had at 5 as well, so we're aligned once again, but I don't want to do the absolute stat vomit here, but 25th place for expected goals for, 3rd most expected goals against. Yes, that's worse than Chicago Blackhawks. Most high danger shot, or 4th most high danger shots against, 2nd most medium danger shots against. It doesn't scream playoffs. I think they were a bit lucky to make it in last season. They need to take a step forward, and they will. They've got another year under their belt now. Some good additions, like Zach Bolduc. That's a good add.
Yep.
Obviously, Dobson is a horse and going to be massive for this team. The top 4 looks very good now. I'm not in love with how the team looked last year. I don't think that I think they're missing maybe a 3rd line, I would say, as a whole. When I look at this team, depending on where they slot guys, that veteran group, that veteran line could be a good 3rd line, but then they're missing a 4th line. It's not fully there for the depth up front for me. It's just not enough experience and not enough proven track record for me to put them over the Ottawa Senators at this point. I do think they're going to be a very competitive team. I think they're going to be knocking on the doorstep of the playoffs. They're going to be better than Buffalo, Detroit, and Boston. So the 5th place is perfect for Montreal.
Yeah. I mean, shocker. I didn't have Montreal in the number 5 spot. I am torturing myself yet again. I had Montreal in the number 6 spot, but look, I mean, this team made the playoffs last year. They were a lot of fun to watch, but I do think there was some luck involved. Dobish, another young kind of, goaltender out of nowhere, had to go on a big run to help them get into the postseason. They bled a lot of chances. Dobson should obviously help with that, and Lane Hutson going into his 2nd year, and Michael Matheson has been such a huge veteran presence back there. But, I just wonder, with having Dobson and Hutson, those guys are both going to want the puck on their stick. So is it kind of more of the same there? I'm curious to see how it looks, how that first power play looks, and so on. And a big hole for me on this team is at 2nd line center. Kirby Dach can't seem to keep the hospital bracelet off. I know that they've been really wanting him to fill that role, but this kind of seems like it's the last year. It's kind of his last chance to do that. And, outside of him, can Newhook, I don't know, maybe Jake Evans had a career year in a contract year, but he's not a 2nd line center. So that's a really glaring hole for me on this team. And, in other parts of their lineup, I think you could be looking at some regression as well, or you question consistency. Like Uri Slafkovsky really struggled last year and then got better in the second half of the season. Can he put together a full season? There's a ton of talent on this team. Demidov is going to be amazing. I mean, he's going to be a human highlight reel every night, but I think there are some very legitimate question marks on this team going in, but no question, whether it's fourth or sixth, certainly expect them to be right in the thick of things in March and April, playing meaningful games and trying to get into the playoffs for a second straight year. I just have some questions about this very young and talented team. That's all.
They need some polishing for sure. And Harp, I agree that it's a bit of a conundrum at center on this team. Obviously, Suzuki is a beast and number 1 but after that, it gets a bit confusing. Jake Evans is very good third line center. That's what he is, and that's what he will be. Dak, we've seen him be special at times, and we've seen him look totally out of place, and he also gets injured a lot. Newhook, I don't think he should play second, third, or fourth line center. So it just, there's a lot of questions down the middle for me, and that does worry me. So yeah, this is why I put them fifth and not fourth.
Yeah, for sure. Like center is a whole, they got to figure out what to do with Doc. Like time is kind of up. And we said it a couple of years ago when they first started going out and making a lot of these moves to acquire these, for lack of a better term, these reclamation projects, like these guys who didn't work out on their draft team, like whether it's a Doc or a Newhook or whoever, right? Like at a certain point, you either have to hit on these guys or realize that it hasn't worked out and move on. And it feels like they're trying to pigeonhole someone into those second and third line center roles, and it's just not working out. I know they've tried to acquire players, whether it be in the offseason or at the deadline. I'm sure they'll try to do it again this year, try to get a second line center. But there's a lot of talent there, and there's a lot of young players who are, who have something to prove at the NHL level, whether it's Slafkovsky this year or, Demidov. Both guys, have something to prove. Demidov being passed on, even though, we said, and so many other people said going into that draft that he was one of the top talents. So yeah, I like that, kind of angle to it where guys have a lot to prove. Like Foligno's another guy who's kind of bounced around and, thought he was going to make a living in Detroit and then didn't really work out there, was sort of squeezed out. So interested to see what he'll do. But yeah, like overall, I do think that this team is shaping up and moving in the right direction here. I'm sure they'll add some players and get even better at the deadline. I think the 5 spot is perfect for them. Something to note is they had the worst goal differential of all playoff teams last year by a wide margin. So that's something that will need to change. And I think that starts with team defense, like we mentioned off the top, not bleeding so many chances, because I think Montembeault's good. I think Dobesh is good. I think Kakinen is good. I don't think any of those guys are great yet, at least, from what I've been able to see so far over the sample size that we have. So I don't think goaltending is going to bail them out as much as, some other teams who bleed chances. So they're going to have to stop the bleeding of chances and tighten up defensively and go from there. Because I think scoring wise, they should be okay this year. I think they're going to score more.
Final 2 quick points about the Habs. There's an article that came out today about Montembeault 4 years ago was a waiver claim for the Montreal Canadiens. Now he's their number 1 goalie. I mean, what a story, and he's been terrific since he arrived for the Habs.
You mentioned that last year in the same episode too, and we talked, and I was like, wasn't like Gus Forsling a waiver claim too? And then we were like, like it's just fun.
No, I know. I knew one. I could tell by the looks on your faces that was going to get brought up. And then I think Nick Suzuki is going to have another huge year because he wants to prove that he can make things difficult on Team Canada management for Milan. He wants to make that team. It's going to be tough, but
got to go to World Championships, buddy. Got to go to World Championships. Unfortunately,
no, that's a good point. But he is a terrific player, and he seems motivated to make that team, or at least make things difficult on management. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. The number 6 spot, I guess we're at here, Chadwick.
Okay, number 6. I'm going to go with a team who does not wear blue. I can't come up with anything. I'm going with Buffalo Harp here for you, right here in the number 6 spot. That's another team that has to stop the bleeding in terms of chances against, but we'll see what can happen this year. They're going to score a lot, just like they did last year, I think. But it'll all come down to how well they can defend and keep pucks out of their net. And that's why I couldn't put them any higher than the 6th spot in my rankings here. We'll see if Norris can stay healthy for the Sabres this year. That will be something that will be, super important for them. Obviously, losing Dylan Cousins, the workhorse from Whitehorse, and bringing in Norris. You thought that was a good trade right off the top, because I think Norris is the better player today. I don't know if he still is, but at the time of the trade, he was. But going back to the theme of this episode, it seems the best ability is availability, and Norris has not been available in Ottawa or in Buffalo. So we'll see what happens with him this year, because that will be a pretty nice add to have him as a healthy first line center, I believe. But listen, I just can't bet on this team to finish any higher than 6th spot until I see it. And I won't be burned again. That's why I have them in the 6th spot. I think they're good. I think they have tons of talent. I've just yet to see them put it together in a full season before as a team.
Yeah, it's exactly like the Utah Mammoth for me, where I said, on paper, they look better. They look like everyone on this team individually should be improving, another step forward, yada, yada, yada. But I just need to see the proof to be able to start ranking them higher. And that's where I also landed in 6 for Buffalo. And a lot of it comes down to the team defense that I think we've been kind of hammering on the last few years. And I just haven't seen the improvement yet. Chad, you mentioned chances against, but here's an interesting stat. Rebound goals against, 46. Then there's 7 teams between 39 and 36. So huge gap between first and second place, and then pretty much the rest of the league. It's a huge gap, Buffalo to the next team.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that, either the goalies are giving up a ton of rebounds, or the crease is not being cleared and the defense is not doing their job.
Soft.
You need to cross-check guys in the face a little more, Rasmus Dahlin.
Owen Bauer.
That went well for you last year.
Yeah.
Or last time, I mean. But yeah, it's the team defense. It's the only thing I'm waiting on to change for this team. And the goaltending is going to have a hard time improving if the team defense doesn't in front of them. There's a lot to like when you look at this team, especially forward. I wish they didn't have to give away some of the players they end up trading, like a JJ Peterka you want to see on this team, but they add good pieces and they have a lot of those similar players. And I really am going to call out Yuri Kulich this season to be the guy to step up to replace a JJ Peterka, and then they can hold on to him. They don't have to trade him.
And Kulich should be able to. He had a very good first season last year. He should be able to take another step. Zach Benson should be able to take another step. Him on the left side with Norris in the middle and Thompson on the right wing as a first line has looked terrific so far in the preseason. Obviously, Norris staying healthy will be a huge factor for this team, and we'll see what a guy like Jack Quinn can do. Guys, I had Buffalo in 5. You have to ride or die with your team, and right. Again, I'll use it once again in this episode, like I have the last couple of years. I'll use the Michael Scott line. I am ready to be hurt again. And, it's another season going in with this team, and it really feels like this is it for the coach, the GM, and this group of players. Ruff and Adams are both in the final years of their deals. What a story it would be if Lindy Ruff in his final year with the franchise that he loves so much, he can finally end this playoff drought that has just hung over this franchise for 15 years, going on 15 years. And there's nothing like it. And so, there's a lot riding on this season. And if it goes horribly wrong, let's say, I think that's when you see guys like Dahlin and Thompson and Tuck and others get to their breaking points. However, I do have some hope in this year's edition of the Buffalo Sabres. And yes, I know Jason Zucker said it at the end of the season. Hope is a shitty strategy, but I look at this team up and down, and I think they are a more well-rounded and better defensive team. I think you start with the blue line. That top four, Dahlin, Byram, Power, and Kesselring, should improve things defensively. It really should. Kesselring has been a very good player the past couple of years, split between Arizona and Utah. There's going to be some pressure on him, but look, big right shot defensemen who are mobile, who have a bomb from the point, those guys are hard to get. And so, it fills a glaring need that they've had ever since they brought Owen Power into the NHL. And then a guy like Josh Doan is just a heart and soul guy. They needed a guy like that to help drive culture. Kesselring does that as well. And both won gold at the World Championships with Tage Thompson in the summer, by the way. That is certainly something to bring up. But Doan has arguably been their best player so far in the preseason. He's a guy that just competes and is in the middle of everything. You can watch it in one of the Sabres Embedded episodes from the summer, around the draft when they made this trade. Utah didn't want to give him up. Bill Armstrong said just too core of a guy, and the early returns so far look pretty good from a guy like Josh Doan. So I think while a lot of people want to rip that trade for Peterka, look, Peterka is a great goal scorer. We know that. I think he's going to do very well in Utah, but was terrible defensively. And so we talk about the back end needing to be better defensively, and the goaltenders, needing to make saves. Better defensively is on the forwards as well. And so I think adding a guy like Doan, adding a guy like Danforth in the bottom six, who Jarmo Kekalainen is obviously very familiar with, Alex Tuck, guys who needs a new contract, and thank goodness he's made it clear that he wants to remain a Buffalo Sabre long term. They just got to get that deal done, and I think he's one of those guys as well that's kind of waiting for some dominoes to fall and seeing where the cap is at in that whole landscape. But Tuck last season, guys, tied for the most shorthanded goals with Vinny Trocheck at 6. I mean, this is an all situations guy, and they need him on this team. And so he's a very valuable piece to have. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, a couple years ago, we saw him put up some of the best numbers in the National Hockey League. I think a lot of things went wrong last season, including for him specifically. I mean, I don't think you can count on a team having a 13-game winless streak 2 years in a row. So that's what I mean when, things just went so badly. Everything went badly for this team last season. So I don't see that happening again. I see Luukkonen being better. And then you're really counting on 2 guys to put this team over the top. We saw it 3 years ago. If Tage Thompson can have over 40 goals and be in that 85, 90 plus point range, this team should be close to being a playoff team. And if Rasmus Dahlin can have another season where he is around in the Norris conversation, say in the top 5, and if he can, keep his emotions in check at times as well, they should be in a good spot. But this is it. Like, this is it for this current regime, this coach, legendary coach that is Lindy Ruff, and for this group of players. I really believe that they have got to be at least playing meaningful games in March and April and just find a way to, play more consistently and try and end this playoff drought finally. But I like the look of this team. Again, on paper, we've been saying that for a few years now. They just have to put it together. But I like the pieces that they've added, and we'll see. So once again, I'm gonna live and die on this sword with this team and have them in 5th, but for all for our intents and purposes here in 6th. Sorry for the long rant.
Yeah, Hartman, I agree. I do think Alex Tuch will be a devil at the deadline when they're not a playoff team. I think 100% they could probably move Palat's contract for Tuch and it will all fit just perfectly. That being said, I will call myself out as being a bit hypocritical when talking about the Buffalo Sabres, because I always pointed out, and we've talked about other teams this way, more of the same is sometimes not a good thing, or too much of the same thing. And I called back a few seasons ago that Buffalo had a lot of the same forward in a Peterka and a Quinn and the list goes on. Guys have been in and out of this roster. So yeah, they have to trade more of the same to get someone new, Doan, Kesserling, different pieces they haven't seen before, try something different because it's not working. So I do like the pieces that they brought in to try to fit a different mold. I was just kind of upset that it was Peterka. I felt like, wrong guy at the wrong time, but a move like that did have to happen. And I think that the decor, especially when Samuelson's back, like it starts to round out a little bit better with Kesserling in the mix. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think the decor looks good, honestly. Like, I don't think the chances that they're bleeding is the entire fault of the decor. Harp, like you kind of alluded to, it was the construction of forwards up front. And, they've changed that to their credit. Like, they pulled the trigger and made a bold change by shipping out Peterka, and we'll see how that, plays out. It is a shame that it was Peterka, because I do think he was the best one, in terms of ceiling. Like, the guy can just rip the puck. I think he's going to have a great year this year in Utah. But Harp, I wanted to ask, like, yes, there's, a lot of the same guy on this team up front. And it kind of makes sense because they've picked in a similar spot, like 5 to 10, overall in the last 15 straight drafts, right? So they've kind of got a similar player every single time if they've drafted a forward. Who do you think of the young guys on this team? So I'm looking at Benson, Quinn, Kulich, and Doan, and Krebs. Of those 5 guys right there, who gets the most points? Who gets the least on this team? Because I'm just like, I know there are different players, but to me, it still just looks like a lot of the same, a lot of younger players who are, gunning for a top 6 role. I think some, like a guy like Krebs is, more suited for a bottom 6 role, but I don't know. He's also pretty talented. So what do you think? How do the points spread out between those 5 young players?
Yeah, well, Krebs at this point is kind of your bona fide 4th line center and a guy who can kill penalties. He's very good in that role. Kulich, you're looking at him as your kind of middle 6 forward, your 2nd or 3rd line center. He actually did very well last year when, they didn't have Norris. They only had him for 3 games. And after they moved Dylan Cousins, Kulich was playing on the top line with Thompson and Benson and was doing very well, putting up points, very good defensively, facing a lot of tough matchups. Jack Quinn, for a guy who had a really tough season last year, still had 15 goals and 39 points. So can he elevate to 20 or 25 and have over 50 points? I think there's a chance that he can. The guy for me who I think you're going to see the biggest jump from is Zach Benson. You know, before when they had Peterka and Cousins and all these other guys in the lineup, Benson as a 13th overall pick and a guy who was seen as a steal at that number in a very strong 2023 draft was playing on your fourth line. You can't have a talented guy like that playing in your bottom six. I mean, what's the point in having him there? He might as well be in the American Hockey League at that point. But Tage Thompson had better numbers playing with Zach Benson last season than he did with JJ Peterka, believe it or not. And Benson is a guy who is just a coach's dream. Like, I think in short order, he's become one of Lindy Ruff's better players because, yes, does he need to finish more? And we'll see. He's going to get the biggest opportunity to do that playing alongside Norris and Thompson this season. But he's able to, you know, win puck battles along the walls and just really creative puck plays to extend possessions. And, you know, he's able to really create a lot on his own. And I've seen a couple of times in this preseason just some really nice assists on goals from two pure shooters in Josh Norris, who, when healthy, can be between a 35 and a 40 goal scorer, and a guy like Tage Thompson, who, as soon as you give it to him, can absolutely rip the puck and I think could be a 50 goal scorer in this league. So Benson is the one guy for me who's going to take the biggest leap forward. And as Case mentioned, Kulich as well as the second, who I'm going to be watching too. So I think collectively there is enough there to replace the goals that have been left vacant with the JJ Peterka, leaving Buffalo, and again, you know, this team last season in the top 5 in 5-on-5 goal scoring. I think the problem isn't the goals; it's keeping the puck out of their net.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
All right, is it on to me for number 7?
I think so. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of Buffalo talk. Jesus.
No, I apologize, fellas. It's a big year though, like a lot of implications. So anyway,
well, I like you kind of mentioned, like, if this is the last year, you know, that could be a blessing in disguise. If
it's year 6 for Kevin Adams, like it has to be, and he's in the final year of his contract.
What year is it for the
Pagulas against the wall? I thought I was going to segue into the next team, but go ahead, Chad.
Well, what year is it for the Pagulas? That's all I'm asking there is, I think that's the root of the problem. But let's go to number 7.
Yeah.
In this division.
All right. Number 7, I've got the Boston Bruins, who...
never mind.
Okay.
Never mind about the guy against the wall. I guess we're doing Boston.
Okay. All right, yeah, I've got Boston in this spot. You know, you could make an argument that with Jeremy Swayman getting back to an elite level, which I think he certainly can. Last year was just a mess with him being late for camp with contract negotiations and all of that. The team just got off to a bad start and we're just off from the beginning. Having a healthy McAvoy and a healthy Hampus Lindholm back should definitely help. But for me, guys, it's this forward group. And Chad, as we've talked about before on Instagram, they've got maybe 1 or 2 guys in the top 6. And then it's just a bunch of second, third, and fourth liners. Like, maybe you could argue, you know, more third and fourth liners. And we know that Boston, they're the masters of overpaying and overvaluing guys in their bottom 6. David Backes, Matt Bolesky, and now Tanner Jeannot, a 5-year deal at $3.5 million per. I think that he got that deal because so many teams were interested in him. Yes, they're going to be a pain in the ass to play against. And, I know they want to get back to being, sort of having that big bad Bruins kind of vibe or aura around them. But I just look at this team, and other than Pasternak and Geeky, like, who the hell is going to put the puck in the net for this team?
Do you not expect Geeky to have a bit of regression over
good point. That's a good point too. So I don't know. Like, you could argue Pasta's on a bit of an island here. I think that this team, they're not a playoff team. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be a hard out every single night, very similar to like the Philadelphia Flyers in the Metro, even though I think Boston's better than Philly. But I think this team just needs to stick on the path that they're on, retool for a couple of years, get James Hagens in at the end of the season, get him in full time next year, get another high pick, and kind of follow that Washington model like we've talked about so many times. And that's kind of started. I think that they're hoping that they'll be a playoff team. Everyone's talking like they will be. I'm just not sure. And so I've got Boston in 7, another year to just stockpile assets, retool things a bit, and then go at it really hard next year. What do you guys think?
I had these guys 8th because I looked at this team and saw a lot of 4th line players in the top, in the bottom 9 or the top 9, whatever way you want to look at it. Kind of similar way that you put it, Hart, but I'm going to be even more harsh. I think it's a tough looking forward group. And I will point out that Morgan Geeky, of players who had more than 300 minutes played last year, was 3rd in shooting percentage because he shot 22%. Which is
can't expect
not
that
sustainable
again
by any mean. And that's why I'm kind of like targeting him as a player that's poised for regression, especially as his team continues to regress. I think they were last in the division last year, and that's what I expect out of them. Once again, it's just not shaping together. I think it's time for a retool. We were kind of beating around that topic for them the last couple of years. And I'm safe to say that they should be rebuilding or retooling at least.
Yeah. I think the retool is in full effect here because they're starting to actually pick players in the draft, which is a good thing for, the future. But they've also locked up a bunch of guys long term who they think can fit the timeline still. Like Zadorov is locked up long term. Lindholm on the back end long term. They obviously have McAvoy and Swayman and Pasternak. All of those guys are signed long term. And then Jeannot, like the signing kind of out of nowhere. But they wouldn't have done that if they didn't think that they would be back in the playoffs within the next 3 to 5 years. And I think that's the timeline. It won't be this year. It might not be next year, but the year after that, I think they're fully expecting to be a threat again in this division. And who knows how that will happen if it's Tampa or the Leafs or Florida or whoever has to fall off to make that happen. I think Boston is going to be, knocking at the door in a few years to get back into playoff contention here. But for this upcoming season, I think everybody knows they're not going to be very good. The reason I also had them in the number 7 spot and not number 8 is because they still do have Pasternak and McAvoy and Swayman, who, even if the team is rebuilding and the expectations aren't that high, those guys are pros and they're really, really good ones. And they're going to play their hearts out every game and they can steal games because all 3 of them can be that good. Like Pasta isn't just going to disappear and get 60 points one year. Like he's, a legit threat every time he touches the puck, even if he doesn't really have anybody to pass to. So I think if one of those guys gets injured, sort of like what happened last year with McAvoy after the 4 Nations, or Swayman missing training camp and then being, kind of terrible for the entire season, especially when he first came back. If something like that happens again, then they might be a lottery team. But as it stands right now with those 3 guys healthy, I couldn't put them in 8th. I had to put them in 7th. So I agree with you, Harp. I think that's a good spot for them.
Yeah, no, all good things there on the Bruins, and will be another interesting transitional type season for the Bees for sure. By the way, those classic Bruins jerseys, those things look awesome. They really do. Those things look great.
It's a ploy to distract the masses from how bad the team is going to be this year. Teams do that, It's true.
Yeah, 100%.
Why do you think the Sharks got those amazing new jerseys a couple of years ago when they finally bottomed out? It's
all right. Case, is it you to finish us off at 8 here?
Yeah, and I'm going to take the Detroit Red Wings at number 8.
Again,
I had them at number 7, mostly because I just can't see them being worse than they were last year. They have to go in a positive direction. I can't believe that they're in this situation after the last few years of just tons of additions that just don't work. It's been a tough look in Detroit. That's what I was talking about. A guy against the wall is Stevie Y. Like, this has got to be the end of the line for him if they don't make the playoffs. And they're going to try. They've got pieces. There's holes in this lineup. It's the only thing keeping them down is holes in the lineup. They have guys to fill in around. And they also have like $12.7 million in cap space right now. If you don't think that this team is going to be out there trying to make a big move earlier in the season than the trade deadline, then I think you're crazy. Stevie Y is going to go all out with that $12.7 million. So I think there's young pieces just, steps away from being very good. They have a lot of solid veteran NHL players up front. I'm not as negative on this team as I think a lot of people are, especially you guys having them in the 8th spot. But I think they're better than the Boston Bruins. And when guys on this team, especially in their top 6, get hot, the team gets dragged with them. And Larkin and Raymond and DeBrincat and Kane, Marco Kasper's filled in great as a second line center, and the center core is filling out really well. It's just the pieces around them, the holes, like they're missing a top 6 forward away from being good up front. They're missing one top 4 defenseman away from being pretty solid on the back end. It's just they fill those holes and they start looking a bit better.
Yeah, well, they filled one big hole, which was goaltending. They got John Gibson, which I think was a really good move because, goaltending in Detroit has been a bit of a revolving door for the past, half decade. So I think that was a solid move to get Gibson. He's got 2 years left at 6.4, although, cap to this team doesn't really matter right now. As you mentioned, Case, they have so much cap space to work with. And they're going to be active. They're going to try to get someone, like you mentioned. But right now, I just couldn't put this team any higher than last place in the division because I just think it's so incomplete. And I think they have so many redundancies in this lineup. I talked about it. I told you guys I listened to last year's episode, and I talked about having both Kopp and Compher. I think those guys do the same thing, and they're both overpaid. You add Mason Appleton to that lineup, and those 3 guys make a solid third line. But then what about everywhere else? Like you mentioned, Case, they're missing a top 6 forward or 2, in my opinion. I think Kasper is an okay 2C. I don't think he's ready yet to be a legit 2C on a playoff team. So I don't know exactly what management expects to get out of this team this year. I think they can score. They can certainly generate chances. Last year, they scored the 22nd most goals in the league. So, bottom third of the league, but they generated the 16th most expected goals. So, that's not nothing. That's middle of the pack, and that's good enough to be a playoff team. If you look at Montreal, it was about the same, middle of the pack. So that's good enough. I just don't know if there's enough here to, put them into contention. I don't think they're better than Buffalo. I don't think they're better than even Boston because Boston has those 3 studs that I talked about. I don't think they're better than Montreal because I think Montreal is structured in a way that looks more like a playoff team. And have you seen the back end? Casey, you mentioned that, they're maybe one move away from making their top 4 look okay, but it's you got Sherratt playing with Sider. Like, is there no one better to play there? And Edvinsson,
Well-
I know, is, he has to be better and step up, but that's a lot of pressure to put on a young guy like him. So
Yeah,
I don't
think
know.
There's one guy when you're looking at, if you're looking at whatever Puckpedia, there's one guy that's missing from that defense that could really solve a huge issue for them, and that's Axel Sandin-Pellikka, who is an incredibly high ceiling and one of the best skaters I've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get him into that top four and playing in a meaningful way, then you're looking at a decent top four just through the prospect pool. So you still have $12.7 million to bring in a defenseman and a forward. And then, hey, maybe things are shaping up, because I really like that three-headed beast out back of Mo and Edvinsson and Sandin-Pellikka when it comes together.
Yeah. And listen, I understand that sentiment, but like, look around the league. Look at the playoff teams around the league. Like, they don't have young players in key prominent roles for the most part. Like, especially teams who are competing for the cup. And I'm not saying Detroit's anywhere close, but they certainly had aspirations of being, a cup contending team 5 years ago when they started this rebuild. And I think the biggest problem is they haven't really had that like number 1 to number 3 pick. Like, they've kind of always picked in the, similar to Buffalo, like 7 spot, like 10 spot, because there's another guy like a Nate Danielson can fill in this year, but is that going to move the needle? I don't know. Like Sandin-Pellikka, yes, I like that player a lot. Like, I was really high on him even during the draft when we talked about that, in that episode a couple of years ago. But I just don't think inserting a guy like that into the lineup really moves the needle at all in a division that's so hyper competitive, where all the teams are still really good and no one's totally bottoming out.
I mean, we're
It's just
framing this conversation like I'm putting them in the playoffs, but we're talking about 7th or 8th place in the Atlantic Division here.
I fully understand that you did not put them in the playoffs. I'm just saying that, like, it's a bit disappointing, and I think the Shannon plan, or not the Shannon plan, boy, that is over, but the Yzer plan, a couple former teammates there, and both are over. One still has a job, but both are certainly over, especially after this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, God, both the Red Wings and the Sabres are in similar spots. And I had to eat my words last year because I was high on Buffalo. I was all over Detroit and down on them. But I just, other than the goaltending, I don't think they really got any better. And like, can Lucas Raymond have the kind of year that he did last year? Maybe, but probably, but they need more guys to, have better years. Like, yeah, they've got some good veterans, but I'd argue they're not very impactful. Like guys like Comfer and Kopp, like you mentioned, Chad, and they added Van Riemsdyk. Well, his best days are behind him, and Patrick Kane is not the prime Patrick Kane that we saw when he was in Chicago. Still a good player, still can put up 55 to 60 points, but not sure there. DeBrincat tends to be a streaky player, and to me, they still don't have that, like you mentioned, Case, that bona fide top 6 forward, and more importantly, that left winger to play with Larkin and Raymond. They still don't have that guy, in my opinion, and you guys know how down I am on that back end. I basically look at 2 guys, at least for right now. I do agree, Sandin-Pellikka waiting in the wings, that's an exciting thing for this team, but on paper, as this team looks today, you've got 2 guys on that blue line, maybe 3 with Albert Johansson, who played all right last year, but it's Sider and Edvinsson, and then it's a bunch of veterans who, their best days are kind of behind them. Hamonic and, Hall and Sherratt. Like, I don't know. But also,
even Edvinsson, dude, he's played 100 NHL games. He's 22.
Yeah.
Like, that can't be a guy that you rely on. I know he's good. He was picked, 6th overall, but, like, I just feel like it's too soon to be relying on him.
Why are the Devils okay to like rely on or Luke Hughes, but Detroit's not
Because he's
okay to
insulated.
rely on Edvinsson.
Because there's
But he's going to play 24 minutes a game. Luke will.
I know, but he's not the number one defenseman or number two defenseman.
I'm not saying this team's going to be very good, but at some point you need your young guys to start being good players. That's what happens with every single team in the National Hockey League, and that's how they get there. So.
But it's like the guy's played 100 games. He had 30 points last year. Like that's good for a 22-year-old. But if you want to be
massive and plays more of a defensive style play than a point getter,
it's kind of like to compare Buffalo and Detroit. It's kind of like Buffalo with Owen Power. Like still a young player, but you're looking for more there. It's like okay. Good sample size of games, do it again. And obviously, Edvinsson doesn't have that kind of pressure on him like Power does. There's only one guy out of those two making over 8 million sheets a season, but that you can kind of compare the two there. And also, Case, like you mentioned, talk about a couple of general managers with a lot of pressure on them. Year 7 for Yzerman, year 6 for Kevin Adams.
Both gone after this year if they both miss, I think.
I agree. And Buffalo this summer, they may have hired Adams' replacement. So,
but if you're gonna not want to rely on young defensemen, then Detroit should trade William Wallander or Bernard Docker, or I don't know, pick another young prospect on the team, trade them, and bring in someone good. Then Yzerman's got to do something like that because I agree. Mean, if drafting players and developing them isn't a thing you can do, then you got to trade them to someone who can. They had more points than the New York Rangers last year.
That is crazy to say. Actually.
That is crazy.
That is crazy to say.
Definitely don't see that happening again. Just a couple more things I want to say here. I know it's been a long one, boys, but we kind of knew this going in. You look at how these cup teams have been built the last couple of years. Drafting and developing is important, but if you can make good trades and signings, like we've seen with Florida and Vegas over the past few years, that's, you could argue that Florida has won their 2 cups in a row because of really good trades and signings. No?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Like who did they draft and develop? Obviously a few guys, but
yeah,
you had to get Bobrovsky, you had to get Verhaeghe and Sam Bennett and guys like that, Reinhardt and Kachuk and, so.
So, and I guess what I'm trying to say is my point in drafting and developing, yes, of course it's important. And Yzerman has proven to be very good at that. But I think, and you could say this about, Adams too. It's just, it's assembling a team properly. So far, these 2 general managers, Yzerman included, they failed at that. And we'll see heading into this season, year 7 of the Yzer plan for Detroit. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Stockpiled a lot of good young assets, but not a team yet. It is a good comparison, actually. Buffalo and Detroit, they're in a similar position. And you know what? Even though we picked Buffalo to finish in 6th and Detroit to finish in 8th, wouldn't surprise me if either of those teams are kind of sniffing a playoff spot midway through the season. It's not like they're going to be lottery teams, I don't think. Just because Detroit's going to finish, or we're picking them to finish in 8th, I don't think they're going to be as bad as San Jose or Chicago or whoever. But it's just concerning now that Stevie Y has been at the helm for so long and they've accomplished exactly nothing.
Well, both teams have, Detroit's been closer than Buffalo to a playoff spot, but yeah, ultimately haven't gotten in yet. And another thing too, Dylan Larkin, I mean, his patience has got to be wearing thin with this. If this year goes badly for the Red Wings, or they don't make the playoffs, or they're not close, I could see a guy like that asking for a trade, because he was very open publicly last year after the deadline about how inactive Yzerman was, and they were in the race after they got hot, and things got better under Todd McClellan. So I think that's something that hasn't really been talked about, that is a bit of a storyline to watch heading into this season. So I'm very critical of Detroit heading into this season.
Yeah. I mean, clearly me too, but I mean, we'll see, right? Like, like we'll see what happens in the Atlantic here, but I think that wraps it up, for our divisions.
That wraps it up, fellas. Thank you. That was a long one. Great for the three of us to be on together again. Always fun talking about the Atlantic, as it is for all four of these NHL divisions: the Atlantic, the Metro, the Pacific, and the Central. So that wraps it up for our 4 division predictions episodes here on the Boys in the Booth podcast. Thank you so much for listening to episode 249, and we will talk to you again soon.